Hey, everybody. This is another episode of Mentor Minutes. I'm Jay.
And I'm Jared.
And today we're continuing our series interviewing publishers and designers. And we have two games today for our review. The first is Tutankhamun, a Reiner Knizia classic that's just been reprinted in a gorgeous new art style.
Very colorful.
And another game that's been out for just a year called Jurassic Parts. And we also are joined today with the publisher. Both of these games are from 25th Century Games. And Chad Elkins, welcome to the podcast/YouTube video.
Hey there. Thanks for having me. This will be fun. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. And so we're actually going to do, this is a video podcast, but it's also streamed to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that good stuff.
Everywhere you can find podcasts everywhere.
Yeah. So so for our listeners that are listening on the podcast version, if you want to see our beautiful faces, head over to the YouTube channel Meeple Mentor.
Yes.
And Jay's giving me the no.
Don't do it. Don't risk it, folks. It's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
We're excited to have Chad on the channel and discuss these upcoming games as we do sometimes.
Yeah, we do. We do sometimes. That's right.
Chad, what is your role at 25th Century Games, and just tell us a little bit about you and 25th Century, if you would.
Sure. Yeah. So owner, whatever, founder, whatever. Pretty much like mission control here at 25th Century. We've been basically publishing games for probably, I think, what year is it now? 2021?
2021, that's right. It is 2021, yes.
I think about 5 years now. It feels weird saying it's been that long. I think it has been about that. Obviously, like a lot of indie startup publishers, it was, like the volume and cadence of games was a little slow. And then we've, as kind of gotten the machine moving and really starting to see some growth, that the volume of titles are starting to kind of escalate. So, but yeah, it's about 5 years in total.
5 years. That's very impressive. How many games have you released under 25th Century in only 5 years?
Roughly.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be exact.
Yeah. No. Now I'm like thinking about that myself. You should have given this question first. I could have.
We should have prepped you. Got this right here.
Stop it. Oh, go. That's a good question. I'm probably up to about probably 10 or so published titles at this point. I think it's kind of hard to keep it straight because you've got some that are like
in process, sure.
Coming, and you've got various stages of.
You don't want to give anything away for the future just yet.
Oh, unless you want to.
Oh,
and then it's an exclusive.
About 10 or so, I think, is the number where we're at now. Which is certainly nothing to laugh at.
That's quite impressive. Yeah. That's at least 2 a year. What's it been like trying to contact? Are you working with designers like Reiner Knizia, or do you more contact like the companies that have the license?
So a bit of a mix, right? Different approaches to take. So most of the games that we've done have been like homegrown, right? Like you've never been published. Designer has a design, prototype stuff, you vet it, put it in development for a period of time, all the graphic design, art, illustration, etc. So that's how most of it works. Now we have done some other various approaches. One of them is localization. So Space Explorers, which is a title that is probably one of the first titles I think that really kind of started the momentum and like really getting people where they started to find like who is this this publisher, right? Like they're really kind of the one that started I think a lot of our growth. That game was actually originally published in Russia, so it was a Russian title that we localized in English in the U.S. That's something we still have on the roadmap and still do. There's a game we have coming up in Q1 called Prehistories. That was a French publisher. That we are making an English version for the U.S. for that. So that is an option. And I'm always talking to publishers about that and trying to see what games feel right we want to take on. Then there's Tutankhamun's a little different because it was a game. It wasn't really a localized game. This was a game that existed at one point, and we're going to kind of come back and made a kind of a new edition version of it. But most of the time, it's like you would traditionally think of from a publication standpoint, from a brand new design, development, etc.
One thing I'm always really fascinated with is how did you get into this to begin with? What's sort of your origin story, and what made you think, hey, I can be a board game publisher?
Yeah, so I've really almost, like most of my career has been in like product management, some kind, and whether it's tech or spent some time like building up food, kind of grocery products from like concept to store shelf. So a lot of the skills what you need to be a publisher and to kind of play mission control in that type of a role, covers everything from ideation and like roadmap planning and like prioritization, of like what do you work on and what types of things do you work on, all the way through production, sales and marketing, logistics. Like you really have to really have that full
business owner perspective
suite of like things that you're interested in. Obviously, the bigger you get, you can hire people to do specialized things for just marketing and for just logistics and things like that. But which is why a lot of people that are designers who are thinking about self-publishing, I mean, that is a step into a business, and it's really a lot more complicated and a lot seriouser than, if that's even a word, than what people would probably think it is. Like, oh, I'm just going to self-publish and kickstart my game and whatever. Then all of a sudden quickly find themselves in a,
like, 200 orders,
like international like logistics, freight. How do I deal with like international taxes? How do I deal with, like, it's like a lot of things, and that's only getting more and more complicated, as the years kind of progress and the economy around the world changes. But
so at this point, how many employees do you have?
None.
That's awesome.
So you also doing game development as well?
Yeah. So no full-time employees. Now we obviously contract work out for illustrators. I have a regular couple of different graphic designers, that are constantly doing work, on a contract basis. But and obviously the designers themselves. But yeah, there's no other full-time employee, which it's that's really like any small business, right? Like you carry it as far as you can, leveraging.
When you get outworked, you kind of have to.
Right.
And then at some point, like when you make a transition to hiring someone full time to take on certain aspects that you think will help grow you faster, than you would have trying to keep doing your own. And COVID was weird in a lot of ways, but I think because there was probably a plan for this year to be that year when possibly look at bringing someone else on, and take on some roles, and that kind of just all things kind of went out the window in COVID. But
so I'm maybe curious. I'm curious how you pick the games that you want to publish. Because like you said, Tutankhamun is a reprint of an older game, but yet Jurassic Parts, which came out last year, is a new one from the ground up. How do you select that, or how do you find your designers to work with?
Like almost all of them have their own origin story. It's I mean, there's no like secret sauce to it, right? I mean, I think just about daily, I'll get a design submission or more than one. They just come through the website, Google's contact and say, I've got a design. They put their like kind of pitch thing, and then they run through those, and that has produced some interest, from some sort of projects. But a lot of it is just, it's really interesting. So Jurassic Parts came about specifically. I was speaking on a panel at Southern Fried Game Expo, and one of the folks on the panel was Kevin Lansing. So Kevin Lansing, very well known for the Flashpoint Fire Rescue series, games which are phenomenal,
awesome co-ops,
and lots of good expansions.
Yeah, like that whole run is just fantastic. So Kevin was on this panel talking about from a designer perspective, and I was on it, from a publisher perspective. And kind of we got through the panel and just started talking. And he's like, I got a game that kind of fits kind of where you're kind of the space you're playing in. And so that was how that happened. So that's, like I said, everyone kind of has its own kind of meandering way, and
a lot of networking.
Well, not only did you get a great designer, but the illustrator, Andrew Bosley, is just fantastic.
Quite a snag there.
Yeah, Everdell, Tapestry. I mean, you can name a bunch of others, but actually, you have the box right here. It's probably not going to. Well, you're going to do the image. You're going to do the pop up. It's probably
I can pop it up.
But
for our podcast,
there it is. Yeah. But yeah, definitely, it's a great cover, and it's actually a small box, which I know I appreciate more and more. I mean, you can see my collection behind me. A size that actually fits the game, and I think this one does that really well. So
it's a very tight fit, though.
Yeah,
if you had an expansion, you really need another box.
That's true too. Hopefully you will need one.
Bosley, absolutely fantastic. Andy's awesome. Like, just wonderful illustrator. Andy and I have become friends, and have been just kind of like talking about lots of different various things for a couple of years, and then always kept talking about when we do work on a project together, do the project together. And this one came up, and he definitely seemed like the right fit for it, and really brought everything we wanted to bring forward. And he wanted to make sure he incorporated. I wanted to make sure I incorporated all that stuff. Kind of came through. But from a box size perspective, that one, it's very compact, right? I mean, when you buy it off the shelf and you pick it up, it's like a brick. It's basically it's like solid cardboard, except for a layer of a few things.
It's like a miniature Gloomhaven in that this is packed to the brim with cardboard.
That's funny.
Yeah,
I like that analogy. Yeah, well, it's good. It's really good quality. Those hex tiles are really good quality, nice and thick. And,
some of the thickest cardboard that I've seen.
Yeah, they're very, very good quality in the box. And we both had a chance to play this together, and really enjoyed the design. Now this is one that's available. You can buy this even off Amazon or everywhere, right? So this is already out there, and it's been out there for about a year.
That's one that came out, released to the public, like retail stores, like hobby stores and everything, in Q4. So it's like right before the holidays, like November.
Right?
Okay. Kickstarter backers got theirs, I think maybe like August, September. So getting close to a year, like total, from like first delivery. Mm-hmm. Right. And then it sold out within like a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, from like what we had. Obviously the trickle through the distributors and the retail stores, some lingered out there past the holidays, but for the most part, I was done.
That's a good sign that you've got a hit.
Well, I noticed, you correct me here, but it was either BGG Online preview or it was Gen Con Online preview that I saw the game the first time. And just that image kind of stuck with me. And I remembered seeing it again when it was reviewed, by different YouTube channels and things like that. So it had always been on my radar, and so it was awesome to get a chance to actually play it. How would you? I know when we played it, Jared. Yeah. It's got actually, Chad, I'll let you do it. So
why are you asking me?
Yeah, let me ask the expert here. So if you just take a second to describe sort of the way the game plays and kind of who the intended audience is. And then Jared and I can give you some of our thoughts on our playthrough as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think from an intended audience standpoint, I think it definitely hits. It's only a family weight game. It definitely is probably a gateway style. The rules are not very complicated. Once you kind of read them and dig into them. So, right now our reprint, we came back out. It's in Barnes and Noble stores now across the country.
That's right.
2 million. Second trials. So kind of like your a little bit bigger kind of bookstore, that carries games at retailers, and obviously our friendly local game stores. So it's a lot more widespread available now, which is also good because like it was gone and whatever. But those type of stores, I think the shoppers that are in there buying games, that is probably the right intended audience. And that hopefully it'll do really well. So that all that's just happened in the last like month or so. But from a game mechanic standpoint, so or mechanism, whatever you want to call it. If you play a lot of games, you probably these terms will probably be familiar to you. So it's an interesting take on area control. So it's got a mix of area control tapped with set collection. Mm-hmm. So what you have in front of you is a large slab of rock, which has a mix of fossil tiles you can see, some fossil tiles you can't because they're hidden. And that's probably like the revealing aspect and kind of the chance kind of unknown type stuff. What you're doing is you're basically laying out chisel lines in the slab of rock. You're going around and laying them out, really kind of like trying to fence off an area, so to speak. But what you're trying to do is break a section of that large slab off. And then whoever contributes to the break, so only people who actually contributed to that fault line will get the rewards, right? And split up, the fossils that are there. And it's by rank order of who had the most influence, the most chisel lines, at that point. So at that point, it's pure set collection. And obviously there's some manipulation. There's an economy around the amber. And you're just trying to collect dinosaurs and score points.
Yeah, I love the first player marker, which is the mosquito in the amber. It looks great. Yeah. I love that you went with that choice. It's interesting because this game, in some ways, reminded me a little bit. Oh, hey, that's my fish. Because it's very, very, very different mechanically, but the way that you can break off sections and kind of, make cut off areas from your opponents. I thought that was a really neat mechanic. I like that you made the choice to have some of the tiles upside down, because there's always a risk in what you're going to get and whether that piece helps you. And I also like too how that you actually can build the full sort of these dinosaur skeletons, from the set collection, and then you get bonuses for that as well. So we had a really good time with this game.
Yeah, and I've tried it at 2 players and 4 players. And it gets very crazy when you get more players in there, because you can only really place so many chisels per turn.
Right.
You regularly get 2, but you can only save 1. And it's like, do you build up a turn and then try to take something that someone else had been building on? Or are you going to start your own path? And all these decisions are complicated the more players that are involved, which I found really interesting. But even without that, it played really good as a 2-player game.
Yeah, really good heads up. There was one notable. So I was going real heavy on collecting the fossilized plants to get those bonus points. And Jared was focusing mostly on building out the dinosaurs.
I think I got both Brachiosaurus.
You did. I think you did. And our score was within 1 point of each other at the end of the game. And you won.
Yeah.
So
very tight.
It was also great that there's multiple ways that you can win this game. There's no real strong path. And then that strategic decision of, do you contribute, like you said, to that fault line, or just let your opponent have it and going for what you're wanting to do? That definitely got me a couple times.
So there was one moment where he was going for this big fault line, and he didn't notice that if I had just put one chisel like on this one little path, it breaks the whole slab into 2, the whole thing.
That's right. That's right.
So it didn't even matter that he had spent turn after turn going for this thing.
He got everything.
Because I I just cut it in half. I'm like, looks like they're all half mine.
Your choice.
You missed out there.
Yeah.
It's like 2 players is a very different experience, than 3 to 4. And it's a lot more kind of push pull, because like you don't have to contribute a lot to get half, right? As long as you've participated, you'll end up with half of them. But it is interesting because you're trying to like min-max, like how much do I have to work to get those tiles, and you're still capped at 6, right? Like the most you can pull in a turn is 6. So getting access to 20, well, it doesn't really do you a whole lot of good. If the max you can do a 6, you just have to kind of think about that in the confines. What's the max? But what's interesting, the more people play it, you start thinking about different ways to play it. You'll start counting out, if I come in and like cut this off at the pass, I'm going to, based on those chisel counts, they've been working on this thing, I'm going to basically rob them of like 1 or 2 tiles, or I can get a couple more than I would have otherwise. So that the more you play it, you'll start seeing these things. And I think people will start leveraging. First time you play it, you probably won't leverage the
you don't see a lot of that until a couple plays or late game, and you're like, and one thing, like you were saying,
you'll start like, why didn't I just pick this tile up? I could have used the field leader to turn in Amber Lilies and get the tile I wanted, but I kept playing around trying to chisel it away.
Right. And
people, the more they play it, will use those abilities a lot more, and it does absolutely change the gameplay.
Yeah, I've really found that this was a very, like, not heavy game, but like a heavy strategy game. And like the more we were playing it, I was like, this is actually, there's a lot to think about, to really, like you said, min-max your turns, and like when to be offensive, when to be defensive, when to take that wait turn where you save one, that kind of stuff.
But yeah, I love the fact that you mentioned that it was in Barnes and Noble and others. To me, this is a great example of a game that we want to see out in the public, because it is such a welcoming game. The theme is just bang on. Perfect. Right? It does have simple enough rules that family who's maybe never played anything other than mainstream games could get in right into this. And then I love the fact that the more time you spend with it, the deeper you'll go. And I think that can really be a revelation to a family who's looking for a game, and then it opens another world to this hobby market. So well done on that title. I'm really about that.
I did
if
show
you play Ticket to Ride, you can play this game. Like it's like
that's true. That's absolutely right.
If you can grasp Ticket to Ride, this is no problem at all.
Yeah.
If that's where you've progressed in your like gaming kind of like journey, you've got to that point. This is one that's right.
I completely agree.
Now I noticed it said ages 13 and up, but I did try this with my 7-year-old, and she's not much into games right now, but she at least understood like how to play and the concept. Now, as far as strategy, no way, like no understanding of how to, like where should she go next. But she liked the idea of just like making her own little path and sectioning that out and collecting stuff and then trying to match them together and physically making those dinosaur bone sets.
Yeah.
And so I tried to be very non-aggressive since she was having fun doing her thing. And so I made my thing, and, you know, it was just a fun. So, you know, younger ages, that's sort of the experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say, obviously, you as the publisher, you know this, but like that 13 label has to be there because it has those small parts, right? Choking hazards and things like that. I guess that when you're working with those mass market stores like Barnes and Noble, do you have to think even more carefully about how you're sort of labeling those games, and, you know, especially with based on the components that you include in the box and those?
Yeah, there's different schools of thought, right? Like what historically a lot of people have done, and a lot of people still do it, and this one is like at around 13-ish because of really it's not necessarily like could a 10-year-old be told how to play and be fine and absolutely do it. It's like, but could you hand that box to an 8-year-old and they just go off and figure out how to play? Like that's to me that's a little bit different, you know, versus like guiding them, like, you know, so your daughter like, you know, like, this is how you play. Add 3 chisels over here and then put them out. Like if kids are gamers, right, and they're playing a lot of games, so I imagine, you know, yours probably does. If they grasp these types of things way better than kids that aren't really gamers. But really, there's like a movement for a long time where people would just put 14 or 13, whatever, plus on a box because they didn't want to pay for testing. Any game below a certain age, depending on the country, whether it's Europe or US, for example, or Canada, if it's below a certain range, you get as a publisher, you have to go pay for different levels of safety testing. And it ranges by the type of components you have. And so that can get expensive if you have a lot of different stuff in it. So a lot of publishers for a long time would just say, no matter what the game was, as long as it didn't look like, you know, like a Hava type of game, like, yeah, just put 14 on it and you're fine, right? Don't worry about testing. So like Tutankhamun, like we have 10 on that box. You know, so that game got tested, you know, just like anything that age range would. But that's a game I think you could handle 10 or 8, you know, and could play it. The rules are relatively simple. I don't think Jurassic Park you could pick up that box as an 8-year-old or 10-year-old.
Yeah, right. I hadn't thought about that. Just being able to like let a kid open it and just teach it to themselves, or be able to play it without an adult.
Yeah, me neither. Well,
yeah, and there's schools of thought, right? Like people will put ages. A lot of people have said would do it around to skirt the testing rules. Like I don't believe in that. It's like I want someone looking at that game on a shelf and looking at that age, because it's an appropriate recommendation, not just, you know, trying to either put it younger so more people will buy it because they think it's open for more families, or make it too old sounding because you want to skirt testing. You really should be aging them out appropriately.
Yeah, absolutely.
But people know, like, you know, if your kid can grasp something. And so if it's at 12, you're like, yeah, my 8-year-old can do that.
Right.
Well, you know, speaking of Tutankhamun, so you've been going to Kickstarter with your games, and I know you had a deluxe version of this kind of available on Kickstarter that had some fantastic components, but I think just the base game itself has some really good components as well.
I'll say when we opened it up, he was.
I thought it was a Kickstarter.
He was shocked.
I thought it was the Kickstarter.
He's like, "Are you kidding me? This is a thing in the box, and it doesn't. It just looks that good.
It's just there to look great. I love it."
I'm like, yeah.
But we're talking about the not the Sphinx, the sarcophagus, right? The box.
I'm gonna open it up.
Yeah. No. So full disclosure, Reiner Knizia is one of my favorite designers.
He gets mentioned a lot on our podcast.
I absolutely do. And I had never played this game before. The older version. And one of my favorite mechanisms is the ability to move as far as you want on a track, but you can't go back. I love that mechanism. So
when I saw that was this kind of game, I'm like, Jay, you're gonna flip out. You're gonna love this thing.
I was like,
it's 2 notches already.
Sign me up.
It's Knizia and it's push your
forward. And again, it's another one of the family weight games. I'd say this even more so than Jurassic Parts, because it's very quick setup, super simple rule sets, but some really great, compelling gameplay. And before I get into it too, Chad, I'll let you again discuss Tutankhamun. Actually, a little bit interested in how you got a title from Reiner Knizia, and then what made you decide to do this kind of deluxe printing and resurrect this title.
I'd reached out and we had been talking about doing a game, you know, whether it's a new game or, you know, resurrecting an older one. I mean, The Good Doctor's published what, like 600?
600, yeah.
Right. So, you know, and a lot of those titles go back 20 years, and if you think about the resurgence of the hobby now, like it's really kind of exploded over the last 10 years. Probably you could say really the last 5 years is probably lot more concentration of it. But let's just say 10 years. So there's a lot of people out there that are now actively searching out good board games and buying board games that were not around when a whole wave of games existed, if they haven't been reprinted.
I still find it fascinating, like how often I come across gamers that haven't played Carcassonne or Settlers of Catan or all these like classics that like we played all the time when they came out, but we were gaming back then. But if you hadn't been in the scene, no one's playing those very much anymore. But like most everybody has, if you live through it as a gamer.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like just a lot of the kind of the, like Ra, for example. I mean, speaking of Knizia, or like Tigris and Euphrates or Samurai, or there's a lot of old Knizia games that have seen more recent publishings, but not in the last 5 years, right? So like there's a whole group of games out there that exist that haven't been kind of re-brought back. I mean, like Elk Creek, bringing back Atlantis is another good example.
That's true.
Which is an older game that people probably had no idea ever existed, but they just know this version.
So would you say Tutankhamun is one of your favorite Knizia games then?
So it was a game I had actually had owned it for probably at least 10 years. It's gone actually, and I now also own the very, very original. So it's actually gone through 2 pressings. So the first was in like 93, but
I think that's right.
I think, blanking out. I think it's 93. So if you can go on BGG and correct me. And
I'm sure it is. Yeah, because we also discussed that too when we were playing it. So you're right.
So that was the old, and it's like buried behind some boxes. I could actually pull it out and show it. I'm going to do it.
It wasn't very pretty. I'll say that.
But what matters is the gameplay. Everybody knows that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's what everybody looks at now.
That's why people back on.
Oh, there it is. Look at that.
This is how big it was. And it wasn't very thick. It's like, so.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
But this is the original. So this one came out 93. Yep, there we go, 93. So it was up for the Spiel that year.
I didn't know it was nominated.
Printed in Germany. And
I gotta say, if you're a podcast listener, you're really missing out on being able to see the cover.
That's right.
For this 1993 edition.
That's right. This is the incentive for you to watch the YouTube video.
Follow back up.
Well, and the only reason it actually even is that big, because the game is just tiles, right? So, if you're looking, the only reason it's that big is because the scoreboard was literally this big and was not bifolded for some reason.
Oh, wow. It's literally the size of it's like bigger than a Ticket to Ride box.
It's like poster size.
Because the rest of the game, it's actually a secondary scoreboard here, which you can, instead of that one, but then you've got the tiles and some of the markers. So
maybe that's the size box that people expected at that time,
It was also kind of a standard size box for certain games. Like I've got another game I got like Rabbit and Hare. I think is like really. I think it's also from the going.
That was the Spojars, yeah.
Which I guess was later redone as Around the World in 80 Days. But and then so that was nice. That was only printed in Germany. Like it didn't exist in English. And so then you kind of fast forward 12 years. I think it's 2005 is when then it got an English pressing originally, and that one looks like. I should have had all these handy beforehand. So that now looks like this.
Oh, interesting.
Small box. So,
yeah. So this is it's not really all that much to look at.
Right.
But this was made by Out of the Box Publishing, which probably most famous for Apples to Apples, and they no longer exist. I don't know if they got bought out or just went out of business or what. But it's all 2005. That lasted for available in stores for a little while, and then just kind of went away. And this is the version that I own. This is actually the same version I've owned for probably over 10 years now. Mainly because I had gotten into the hobby over 10 years ago, discovered Knizia games, and this kind of, Lost Cities and this other stuff. And I just kind of started going, like looking for fun Knizia titles and just trying them out. I'm not a huge heavy gamer, so a lot of his stuff just kind of hits the right wheelhouse for me.
Right.
So I just started buying up Knizia games. And so this was one I bought. And so when we're talking about, doing a game, there's some stuff some older stuff we've been thinking about that probably could be resurfaced again. That would be a possibility. And this was one of the names on the list. And I was like, I literally can reach that game on my shelf, right? Like it's like that. This is a game I've owned for a long time. And so it was like, let's do that. And so we started trying to go down the path of bringing it back. And
I love that you have both editions of the original copy of this game.
Yeah, that's a true believer right there.
Yeah, this is a guy who loves this game and is like, I need this back in a nice, beautiful package, and people are gonna love it. And from all,
it looks great. I mean, it's a great cover. It's very colorful, and it looks great on the table too.
Yeah.
Especially with some of the non-playing components like the sarcophagus we mentioned. The fact that you're using the box itself as the scoreboard, it just has a lot of really interesting table presence. So this is definitely one I would stop and look at if I was checking it out. And again, with the tiles. So, Chad, why don't you describe the game for us a little bit?
The gameplay for those who haven't. Seen this already.
So the art, just to give credit where credit's due, obviously, because I didn't do it. I have literally zero skill there. So the art is Jackie Davis, who's an absolutely amazing artist. She's got a long list of games that she's worked on. And so she handled the illustrations, and then Matt Paquette, who I worked with Matt on a number of games now, did all the graphic design work for it. So wonderful duo to work with. And actually working with Jackie on another game coming up for next year that I'm really excited about. Actually, I can say it because it's actually in the BGG database now. So there's another game I'm working on with Jackie doing the illustration for called, I think we're settling on Iron Horse is the name of it. So it's a Wild West train heist game designed by Henry Audubon, who did Kingswood for us, and then Parks and Space Park. So Jackie.
I actually kickstarted Space Park.
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah, I love Team Master. I'm in Atlanta. They're up in Athens, Georgia, which is only about. I can probably be at their place in probably an hour, from here.
Yeah, another great artwork in that game too. So.
Oh yeah,
fantastic.
They do a fantastic job on all their art and their just like their UI and their graphics and stuff. Just everything is really top notch. And their components, they focus a lot on that. I'm a big believer in components. Like you mentioned the tiles for Jurassic Parts earlier, and the thickness of them. Like I don't want our games to feel cheap. That's like the one thing I never want someone to say is it's like kind of chintzy and cheap. Because that's
I wouldn't say that at all.
No. We pack a lot of value in those boxes and tut too, right? So some people are like, oh, well, Tutankhamun's overproduced for what it is. Well, that's not, that's fine. That's a good criticism for me.
Sort of.
As long as it's not overproduced for the sake of being overproduced to elevate MSRP, that's one where that game was probably going to be the same price point, $29.99, if I had a sarcophagus in the box or not.
Well, and it's cardboard, right? So it's not like you're adding miniatures or plastic or whatever.
If I had taken that game and rolled out a retail version at $40, and because it had the sarcophagus and because it had the underworld kind of extra punch out area, then okay, yeah, you can criticize me for that. That's no problem. But that's one that absolutely would have been the same price point either way. But that aside, so
we're happy that the sarcophagus is in it.
Yeah, I'm thrilled that it's there.
I like it. I think it's cool. It's so weird because you get this is not the first time you've been mentioned about being a game being overproduced, and I'll take it all day. But there's a weird, people get weird about like what they criticize in overproduction because there's like a fine line between thinking about the quality of a game. It's like, oh, it's cheap. It's under, it's cheap, whatever. It could have been better. And then it's like, no, it's too much. Like you don't think there's like no like right
middle ground.
I feel like as long as like when you open the box and bring it out, if you have a smile on your face because of how all of it looks and the components, you're like, that's good.
Yeah.
And we had that experience.
Yeah. I mean, it's again, I often think with these games is if I was going to bring these over to say my friend or my brother's house, who doesn't play games much, would this game instantly make them want to try it out? And both these titles check that box because it's not like you said, it's not overproduction for overproduction's sake. It's just nice quality components with great graphic design, great art. And just good table presence that makes you want to get into the game. So
speaking of how to play the game,
yes,
I think we had asked Chad to explain the game mechanism.
That's right.
Yeah. So this is the game you mentioned that earlier. It is a linear path progression game, which was really probably one of the earliest game examples of this mechanism that you can do. So game itself, a bunch of different types of tiles. Just different artifacts. The purpose of the game is like, King Tut is passed away. He's being buried in his tomb. All the players are priests and priestesses going out and collecting artifacts to deposit into Tut's tomb to be discovered in 32 by Henry Carter. So you're trying to cleanse your spirit by donating like the most possessions, and then be the winner by being named next priest of Egypt. Remember, it's an abstract game. It's just something. But it needs to look and feel thematic, which is why the whole tomb thing felt right. The out of the box edition had a little pyramid. So even that one was kind of overproduced for no reason. There's a pyramid that made literally no purpose in the game. But they didn't get heat for it. But apparently I am for a sarcophagus. So you lay you mix these tiles up and you lay them out a single track. And the tiles are shaped in such a way where it won't just be a straight line. Like you can alternate them and make a straight line, but you really kind of make a nice windy Nile-ish river.
Yeah, it forces you to get creative to make it look like a river.
Yeah, that's part of it.
You can like wind it around the tomb. You can like you do a one straight line, come back up again, however you want to do it.
We'll say
I gotta throw Jay under the bus.
My 3D perception was off. That's all I'm going to say.
So as we were setting up the game, I had gotten all the tiles out and I started like aligning them, and he did not want to help for whatever. Like he just didn't.
I was doing something.
He was like just talking or something, and I'm like putting this whole thing together. I'm like almost done, and I'm like, you could have been helping me put this thing together.
I was preoccupied with something. I can't remember what it was.
It's not. You're waiting for an invitation here. Like
it was probably that. And then I started, and it was like I wasn't doing a good job.
Yeah, you're like turning it into itself.
I was like overlapping the rivers. I mean, it was a horror show. So I let Jared finish that.
That's like part one is trying to make the river correct.
Yeah, that's like the first game is the building. And it takes a second, right? It takes 70 tiles. You got to put them out, and you got to put them out one at a time. So it takes like a second. But then once you get it out, it's like a nice looking.
Yep.
So players start at the end of it, away from the tomb, and you line up player order. It is a clockwise player order, so the player order doesn't change based on position of votes. But you have a boat marker that you move forward as far as you want down that Nile. So you're just sailing down the Nile. So you can skip tiles. Although with one caveat, you can go as far forward as you want, or you can go back exactly one space, so one available space. So the more things you skip, you don't have a chance at picking those tiles up. Any tiles that every player skips. So once the first player back moves, any trailing tiles get put into the underworld area, which really just needed to be named something because in the old game you just discarded it to the side, so we've made a little place for it just to connect it.
So is this the first edition of this that calls it the underworld?
Yep.
I like that.
I do like that
a lot, actually. Yeah, it's very super thematic.
Yeah, and the so you're basically picking up sets. Like all the items in the Nile have a number on them, which tells you exactly how many of those tiles exist. So if it says 8, that's the number. There's a Senate board in there, which is an old Egyptian game that was in Tut's tomb. That there's 8 of those in the Nile. Once the last one is picked up or skipped over, and it leaves the Nile and goes in the world. And once the last one leaves, and you score the set, and then you look to see who has the most of the set, not the majority. Like you don't have to get over 50%. You just have to have the most. So then that person scores the number of points on the tile, which in that case would be 8, and then second place scores half of that, and then third place gets nothing. So third and back, the game plays to 6. So third place through 6th place, you get literally nothing. And then those tiles get deposited into the tomb, which is kind of and it literally, in this case, you use the box bottom as the tomb with a Tut sarcophagus in it. So you kind of clean the game up as you go.
Clean up's a snap.
Yeah, we did mention that as we played. I'm like,
we like that.
We're just cleaning the game as we.
Yeah, just clean it up. Well, so people are like, well, the setup takes a little bit. Well, but if you average in setup and breakdown, it's actually isn't that bad.
Totally.
Because there's no breakdown. It's just done.
Yeah, you're just let me just throw the underworld in here and we're done.
Yeah. Easy.
So the going back of space that is new. That was not in the original edition.
I love that actually because I've played lots of games with that mechanism, and the fact that you can slowly work your way back if somebody's kind of cherry picking. I love that. I love that mechanism. And a lot of times I would employ that to go one space extra, knowing that I would likely be able to get the tile that I had just skipped to.
Yeah, I can jump there because you don't want someone else to get that one particular tile. You need back up to and keep going forward.
Right.
So that's new. The god abilities, all those are new for this edition. So the gods didn't exist. There were some kind of like manipulation-ish god tiles, but it was limited to you could steal an artifact from someone at any point in time. I think it was, or And then so that's gone. Another one where I think you could break a tie, I think was one of the pieces. So the original game had the ability to steal a tile, and then you could, if you had a certain tile, I think you could break a tie. So if you're tied with someone, you can use that as a tiebreaker. So those got removed from the game, and then the new god abilities, which offer a little more flexibility and some other options you can do. They're not there to be overpowered, and like if you first one to get this god, it's like always going to win.
Right.
They're very just light situational to where, and the more you play the game, the more you actually will use them. The people are like, I played the whole game, I didn't even use one. It's like, well, I bet if you played that game again, you absolutely would.
Yeah, we definitely did.
We did.
You start really seeing how you can tweak the game to for your favor. But that was the only really. Otherwise, the game was just completely set. Because the river never changes once it's put out there, and it's open knowledge. You know exactly what all the tiles are going in. So having the ability to add things in the back end or remove things downstream, is just a neat way to kind of layer the game in. But
yeah, I really liked it. This is one that Jared's keeping his copy, so I'm gonna have to get my own now.
I don't know.
Can we trade? We might negotiate something
we'll
here, Jared?
because I know you like to build up that Knizia collection.
I do. I have so many. Well, I have quite a few of Reiner's games, the good doctor's games. So, but yeah, really cool title. I loved it. This is one that you brought back. I don't know if you're at liberty to share this or not, but are you teaming up with Dr. Knizia for any future releases, or can you say that?
Yeah, we can. So it's one thing I can definitely talk about. Because it's now already been kind of been leaked out there, and people realize it now. So we are doing a reprint of Ra, which is probably one of the best auction games I would say of all time. Certainly one of the most kind of approachable and really kind of highly regarded auction games. And so I'm really excited about that because that's one where that game is like one we're absolutely not going to go mess with the design at all. We're literally
just excellent.
Reimagine the components and then the artwork and the interface for it and just how to physically bring it back. They're probably
kind of jealous. That sounds like a really fun project.
Also people get a little bit gotta be careful with it too, right? A lot of people are very passionate about some of their older kind of like games because and I can. They're sitting here. Both versions I've got next to me right over here. So the Uber Play kind of Rio Grande edition, which is like the one that people really love, which is the older one, the original style. Then there was like a Z-Man Wind Rider kind of version that came out, Fantasy Flight Wind Rider 4 or 5 years ago, maybe.
That sounds about right, yeah.
Which was, I think certainly got a lot of heat, because it wasn't, people just like the original version better. But, we'll see. Like, you got to treat it with care, because people get really, really upset about their classic.
There's a game that I had thought about when we played Tutankhamun. It's a little more complex, but it's like a very similar game, which is Egizia Shifting Sands.
Oh yeah, it has that river mechanism.
Which is it's the Nile River. It's Egyptian, and you're also the number of boats you have. Like you're limited to continue to go forward. You're not allowed to go backward to take any actions prior.
That's right.
And has that similar, at least that part of it in the theme. But Egizia is a much heavier game than.
Plus,
than
you can't move, and in here you have a lot more. Like you can move a lot further, whereas that one you're limited to maybe 10 spaces or 12, something like that. I think, but
you're right.
I love that game.
They're very different games, but but it's the same kind of theme. So I had to bake that comparison in my head, but at the same time, like they're very, very different, very different experiences. But I would say if someone likes Egizia, they should try Tutankhamun if they wanted a very lighter experience. And again, if you like Tutankhamun and you want a little more like medium weight game with worker placement, then look at Egizia because they're both solid.
Yeah, and again, Tutankhamun has that really classic feel, but it has a lot of great updates, like with the god powers, things like that. So you really can level that strategy however you want. If you're playing with kids, you might take those god powers out and just, play it straight up. But, gamers will enjoy this one too, I think, with the addition of the god powers. So, I really like both of these games.
Yeah, they're easy, like to just remove them, if you're playing with a younger kid, just want to move the things.
And even Jurassic Parts has those cards that you can add or not add for those special abilities, which I think is awesome. I think, with my 7-year-old, not going to include it. But with my gamer group, it's like, yeah, that's a big part of, increasing the strategy to this.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that was one where, so originally those were actually designed to be player powers, like on the player board. They were going to be literally assigned to a player. And it's funny because I still get people will criticize it for like not having asymmetric player powers because the players are just a card with a unique character on it, but there's nothing else that's like really different about them. So that people will criticize that, but really we took them off for a very specific reason and made them individual cards, because one of the things that I really like about what we did with that game, it was very important to us and very important to Andy too, was the character diversity. Even though you're a very limited set of characters, I think there's 6 in the game, and then the field leader, they're very diverse. Just from like a wide range of both ethnicity and body type. And what I really didn't want to have happen was if a player felt really connected to a particular character from like a feel perspective, like a look and feel perspective, I didn't want them to be stuck having the same ability every time they played. And so we pulled them off and made them into cards, because now you can play with whatever character you feel the most connected to, and then you got the cards can just be mixed up and then dealt out as that asymmetric ability, and that's where they sit.
I like that. I actually like that a lot. I'd like to see that actually in more games. Now that you mention it, because
Lords of Hellas does something like that.
You're right.
Too.
Like sometimes I always like, or even me, sometimes I always go with a character that like is the color that I like to play.
Green.
Yeah, the color.
I'm yellow. Yeah. So that's a great take on the way that you represented that. And both of these games, we had a great time playing them. Definitely highly recommend both of these. And Chad, so if people want to get a hold of you, if they want to check out your newest, latest Kickstarters, what are some ways that they can do that?
So the best way to kind of keep up to date is just sign up for our email list. You'll always be updated on that kind of stuff. Follow us on the social channels, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Follow us on Kickstarter. That way you absolutely get notified when we launch a game. Some of the games we do go straight to retail. So not every game we've made has gone, through the Kickstarter process. And so that's been trying that out with a lot of games. I think the Cloud Control and Curmudgeon were 2 that we sent straight to retail that were not Kickstarted. Coming up soon, we've got Sunny Day Sardines, which would be a really lightweight, kind of travel sized, mint 10-ish game. That'd be straight to retail. And then Prehistories, as I mentioned, we're bringing over Rants. That'd be straight to retail as well.
Cool.
But Kickstarter is definitely, we've got several of those kind of all in the works right now, and hopefully launching one by late summer would be the next thing.
Nice.
All right. Well, we'd love to hear more about that when you're ready to launch.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, congratulations on your success at 25th Century Games, and keep on pumping out new titles like this, and we'll keep playing them.
Awesome. I appreciate the kind words and certainly the invitation. It's been fun.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, for the Mentor Minutes podcast, we'll wrap this up. I've been Jared.
And I've been Jay.
We'll see all you guys next time.
Catch you later.
Bye.
Bye.